All right. So before we do the water lab, we're going to talk about some of the different properties that water has. It's pretty awesome. You don't usually think about it when you're drinking a glass of water or going about your daily life, but water's got some pretty awesome things that it does. We're going to go through those today. So water molecule is H2O. It's made up of three atoms, uh, one oxygen and two hydrogen. So it's pretty simple, pretty small. You could go ahead and draw that little water molecule down in the corner with the oxygen and two hydrogens. So water is polar. Now what does that mean? It means that the oxygen side is going to attract more of the electrons, and it's going to be slightly negative. And hydrogen, that side is going to have less electrons, so it's going to be slightly positive. This is what causes water to be polar. So overall, even though within a single molecule of water there's a slight positive on one end and a slight negative, the overall charge is neutral. Now, because water is polar, it allows it to do something called hydrogen bonding. So what it means is because there's that slightly positive charge over here in one water molecule, that slight positive charge is going to act kind of like a magnet, and it's going to bond to the negative side of the oxygen atom. So they're going to kind of stick together. So the highly electronegative atom is the oxygen, and that's going to bond with the hydrogen. So one hydrogen bond doesn't amount for that much. It's not going to be that strong, but there's millions of water molecules in your glass of water, so you're going to have millions of those little hydrogen bonds, which is overall going to be pretty strong. There's another little picture of this going on. You can see, just like a magnet would reorientate, the negative side is going to kind of push away from the negative side until it flips around to the positive, and it's going to bond with that. So some properties of water: it's going to boil at 100 degrees Celsius and freeze at 0. The boiling temperature, if you've ever lived somewhere that's got a higher elevation, so let's say you moved from Denver, as you go up in the mountains, you're going to have lower atmospheric pressure. Because it's lower atmospheric pressure, it's going to allow water to boil more quickly at that higher temperature, or it's going to boil at a lower temperature. So because of this weak hydrogen bonding and the way the water molecules is set up, it's got a couple properties. The main properties of water are cohesion, adhesion, high specific heat, high heat of vaporization, and it's also less dense as a solid. And the next slides will go into each one of those things in detail. So the water molecules at the top of a glass of water will create surface tension and allow things to float on the surface. So cohesion means water is attracted to itself. Because of that attraction to itself, it results in surface tension. That surface film, that top layer, is what allows like insects and lizards, like the Jesus lizard, allows it to run on the surface of the water. Here's a little bugs just floating right on the surface. It's pretty cool. You can see kind of the indent, the dimple in the water here from the bug's leg, but it's not enough weight to push through and overcome the surface tension. Okay, adhesion, similar idea, but it's attraction between two different substances. So it's water attracting to anything else. Um, so water is going to have hydrogen bonding with other surfaces like glass, soil, plant tissue, cotton, um, anything. Water can form hydrogen bonds with it. Water can actually climb up. Let's say you dip a piece of fabric into water, it will climb up. Capillary, and that's known as capillary action. That's also what allows water to get from the roots of a tree all the way up to the leaves. The plant doesn't have a heart pumping water through its system, or the tree doesn't. It has this natural capillary action where water molecules will grab to one side and then to the other side, and keep grabbing on until they climb a very thin tube. You can also see it, yeah, if you have ever put a straw in a cup of drinking water, um, it'll go higher up the straw than it is in the surface of the drink. A couple other examples of adhesion. You've got the droplet forming on the leaf. The reason that water droplet is able to hang there and stick is because it's gluing itself with the hydrogen bonds to the leaf. Um, Same thing with the spider web. Both the adhesion is sticking it to the leaf, and then the surface tension is keeping that droplet in one place. So most of our body is made up of water, and that helps us keep a pretty constant temperature because of water's high specific heat. Um, it takes a lot of energy pumped into a system to raise, let's say you had a gram of water, to raise it just 1 degree, it takes a lot of energy. So if you had a cube, 1 gram cube of water, and you had a 1 gram cube of steel, a little bit of heat into that steel, and it's going to heat the steel up 1 degree. Versus water, it take a long time to change the heat of the water. Um, Water will resist temperature change both ways. So it takes a lot of energy to heat water up, and it also takes a big lack of energy to cool water back down. So it's going to hold on to its temperature. That ends up being a really big thing for us here in San Diego. We get a lot of that warm ocean weather, or the warm ocean helps to keep us warm in the wintertime. And then the ocean cools off a little bit in the summer, and that cool ocean helps to keep us cool as the summer temperatures heat up. What this is saying, you could think about this as if you've ever gone to, like, you're going to make pasta at home and you fill the pot with water and then you crank the heat up. You can put a bunch of heat energy into that water before you actually get the temperature change. So before you get water to boil, if you have a large pot, it takes a really long time. You have to pump a bunch of heat energy in before you get a temperature change, or even a significant change, like actually bringing it to its boiling point. I think this is one of the coolest things about water. So water is less dense as a solid, um, which that's what makes ice float on the top of water. But what's crazy is water, as it cools down, there's a certain point where it becomes more dense before it freezes, And I grew up in the Midwest where there's a lot of lakes and ponds, and basically all ponds would just be they'd be totally dead and lacking of oxygen, especially in the wintertime. Um, but what happens is the water at the very top of a pond cools down and it becomes more dense than the water at the bottom of the pond. So all the water at the top drops down and cycles, it pushes the water that's at the bottom up to the top. It basically cycles all the nutrients in that pond. It's a totally natural process, and it wouldn't happen unless water had that unique property of getting more dense. And then once it freezes, that ice layer sits on top of the pond or sits on top of the lake, and it insulates the rest of the lakes or the pond so that it doesn't freeze all the way through. Um, so the specific heat, the frozen ice layer at the top, all those things help to make sure that like everything that's in the pond, the frogs, all those things that are hibernating or staying living in there over the winter don't freeze solid. And the very bottom part is just talking about how there's the hydrogen bonds, those water molecules are constantly reorienting like little magnets so they can glue their hydrogen bond. Um, but once it freezes into an ice cube, it's forming like a crystal lattice structure. So if you look at a snowflake, you see that crystallized structure of water, and the molecules are set at fixed distances. So you can take a look at the two pictures. Which one do you think is ice? Which one do you think is water? Um, so acids and bases and pH. One water molecule in 550 million naturally dissociates into hydrogen and hydroxide. So H plus is what makes something acidic. So the vinegar in your kitchen, that's because it's got more hydrogen ions. If you have something that's basic, it's going to be the OH, the hydroxide ion, that makes it basic. So the pH scale from 1 to 14 measures the concentration um, of hydrogen ions. If you're right in the middle, that's 7. So if you took your saliva, like a sample of blood, it'd probably be right around 7. Soil sample, most soil samples would be right around 7. 0 to 7 is acidic. So if we took vinegar, if you had apple cider vinegar, it'd probably be around like a 1 or a 2, probably like a 2. And then 7 to 14 means that it's basic. And so there's more of the hydroxide ions. So each unit is representing a 10-time change in concentration. So 6 or 5 has 10 times more hydrogen ions than 6 does. So here's some of the different strong. Lemon juice is actually pretty similar to your stomach acid in acidity. You can see neutral human blood, pure milk, or pure water and milk are right around 7. Normal rainfall is right around 6. Acid rain right at about 5. You got some different bases that you're come in contact with a lot. Seawater is up above 8. Soap, ammonia, then up to bleach, almost up at 13, and other like cleaning supplies are pretty strong bases. So you can, in your blood, so that your pH doesn't change drastically, you've got buffers that are in your blood, and those are weak acids or bases. They're going to react with strong acids or bases to prevent like a strong change either way. Um, So if there's a buffer in a system, you could add a bunch of drops of vinegar solution, and it wouldn't make it really acidic right away. The buffer would help to kind of absorb some of those hydrogen ions. In our body again, so that process of maintaining a stable pH, that's another example of homeostasis, or like a natural balance. Right, that's the end of the show. You're going to be applying all these different properties of water to the water lab that we're going to do in class on Monday. Okay, see you back in the room.